I am probably the president's #1 fan.
That's Nicki Minaj, of course, and we're sticking with our tech lead for another story. There's a new report that analyzes rapper Nicki Minaj's social media claims and suggests that her MAGA content may not be actually as popular among her army of fans known as the Barbs, but rather popular among an army of thousands of bots. Now, the report was shared exclusively with Politico. It detected a network of more than 18,000 inauthentic accounts sharing and reacting to Nicki Minaj's post between November 11th and December 28th. Here to discuss is Dan Brahmy. He's the CEO and founder of Cyabra. It's a company behind this analysis. We're not saying, by the way, before we start getting nasty notes, we're not saying that Nicki Minaj is not popular or that she's not talented, but this is just looking at her social media content before, Dan, you and I get any nasty notes. So, Dan, you analyzed more than 55,000 profiles that interacted with 51 Nicki Minaj posts, and you found about 33% of the engagement was from fake, inauthentic profiles. How are you able to identify that these profiles were not real?
So the way that we analyze that as the company that is the infrastructure for analytics, we look at a framework called actors, behaviors, and content. And we look at specific types of coordination, similar temporal signals, identical messages that are out of hundreds, if not thousands of different parameters that are indications that there is an inclination towards inauthentic behavior and high levels of manipulation and high levels of coordination around specific topics.
So bot activity is obviously rampant on social media, especially when it comes to politics.
That is correct.
But you found something especially odd about this activity, and Politico wrote it up saying, quote, rather than a short-lived spike tied to a single event or appearance, the company found sustained and coordinated amplification of Minaj's posts across a range of political and cultural topics over time, unquote. So let me see if I can translate this and then explain it to me even further, because I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong. You're finding that, like, she posts something and there's obviously a response because she's a huge superstar.
Correct.
But it keeps on going and going and going. And that's really where the inauthentic bot-driven activity is. Is that right?
That is right. And, I think it's very important for us to kind of explain what it means. People shouldn't really focus or fixate over the percentages of inauthentic activities or inauthentic accounts. I think it might be a very controversial, very sexy topic per se, because it is everyday's conversation. But at the end of the day, whether it is 33%, 5%, or 20%, what truly matters between you and me is real people, genuine, authentic people like you and me. Are we getting exposed to the narratives that the so-called inauthentic accounts are driving? So it's never about the 3, the 33, or the 20. It's about, is there a spillover? Is there a spillover? Is there an impact over the audience? And as much as that analysis focused on a sample of what is being said around Nicki Minaj's social media audience, this is completely data-driven. It's data-driven, it's unbiased, it is very objective. And like you said, as a surprising effect, it might seem less surprising when you talk about geopolitical conversations, but it touches every single industry that we see today.
Yeah, and the reason I was really interested in this is because we were covering earlier this week this nonsense attack on Governor Newsom. Governor Newsom on Sunday made a comment at an event where he suggested because he got bad SAT scores, he's like the people in the audience. He's like a regular person because he has dyslexia. And then this account that is just a MAGA lying, smearing account called End Wokeness, they clipped his remarks and mischaracterized it as if Newsom was saying to a black audience, I can't read just like you. It was a racially diverse crowd, in fact, maybe even majority white, and that's not what he was saying. It spiked when End Wokeness put it out there, and a bunch of right-wing accounts and politicians who should know better backed it up. But then what was interesting is the next day, according to an analysis I saw, the impressions went down, meaning the number of like big accounts that push this, but the mention volume went up, meaning more people were talking about it, even though the number of big accounts talking about it was going down. And that suggests possibly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that suggests possibly that was also being driven by bots, right?
You know, while we, as a company, we haven't done any proper analysis over that very specific conversation, I think that what you're describing seems plausible simply because it's a well-known technique in the information warfare and information operations world, if you want to call it like that. Taking a small piece of information and extracting it out of context to shift the conversation, to shift the narratives from one point to another is an extremely well-known, let's call it format of manipulation online. Now here, it was one comment. It was one comment, one sentence. And maybe the author that actually posted that didn't really mean what he or she meant, but eventually it ended up being taken completely out of proportion. And that's the interesting piece. And just to comment on the last thing that you asked, you know, which is number of big accounts going down, but number of volume and mentions going up. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that is probably related to the fact that there's always, I don't want to call it a second wave, but there's always a almost like a backdrop of impact, because sometimes when there's an intention, when there's a real need and a will to try to influence other people's opinions, you don't do it as a spike and leave the table. It never works like that. It's usually very highly coordinated and orchestrated, which is why we're looking at this and doing, through
very
those
interesting,
lenses.
fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. And we should note that Nicki Minaj did not respond to Politico's request for comment on the report. Dan Brahmy, thank you so much.